What's up, guys? I'm Karastar, and this clip is from Difficult Content, an interview podcast about Final Fantasy XIV. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below and click the link at the end for the full interview. How does Eureka Orthos compare to Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High? What does it get right? What does it get wrong? What does it improve on? And how does it fall short?
Big difference between the 3 deep dungeons. Well, between EO and PTD/MLI is auto attacks are not a threat. In EO, it's mostly focused on the mechanics. So in POTD and MLI, the big thing, like the main issue for most of the floors is auto attack damage is crazy high. You just die instantly in MLI and POTD. That means you have to be very careful with pulling your monsters. You have to be very careful moving around, which in turn makes your time drain faster, which then makes you have to care more about managing your time, right? Like you have to manage your time very well because it's just gonna run out. You can't just move forward and pull everything because so many monsters will just kill you even with a steal. That whole thing is not in EO because in EO they took a different approach. In EO, they did not make the auto attacks threatening. They instead make the mechanics threatening. That means there's not really a monster that you can't fight. It's just some are more annoying, but there's no monster you can't fight, and there's no monster that you ever need a steal for or something like that, which means you can usually just go from point A to point B and just kill all that's on the way. You don't really need to dodge things too much. That means time is easier to manage. And now because time is easier to manage, you don't really have to think of your commander usage as much, right? Like you're going to use your commander to survive more than actually manage your time. It's less prone to RNG, which is a bad thing or a good thing depending on who you're going to ask. Like me, if you ask me, it's a bad thing, but I think if you ask most of the player base, you'll see it's a good thing. So in EO, as long as you do the mechanics, you should clear. When I was running for my Omni, it took me 20 attempts to clear 19 jobs. And the one I failed was because I stood in a telegraph because I was reading the chat. Very consistent, deep dungeon. You're not going to get screwed by RNG the same way you would get screwed in PUTD and ML High. I'd say the Dread Beast specifically are good improvement. I quite like the Dread Beast. I think it could be better because like right now, you know what Dread Beast will give you what buff when you see it. And unfortunately, there's only really one buff that's good, which means you kind of ignore the other 2 Dread Beasts all the time. But it's much better than the equivalent in ML High.
How would you rank the 3 deep dungeons in terms of your personal preference?
I'm more of a marathon gamer, so it may not come as a surprise that PUTD is my favorite deep dungeon. I just love when there's a lot on the line, right? When the stakes are high. So for PUTD, for me to be able to lose a run on 199 after climbing for like 14 hours, love it. That cannot be beaten. And me designs, it's the same thing. I prefer the auto attacks to the mechanics, so that also puts MLI and PUTD above EO. The one thing though that I think EO does better than MLI is that there's no big room. Big rooms were very unpleasant in my opinion for MLI. So let's say the way the places look, I actually think EO looks. I think it actually looks the best out of the 3 deep dungeons. The rave caves, as we call them, the 41 to 80. Really, I love the way they look, and the 81 to 100 looks amazing as well. Surprisingly, even better than PUTD, and PUTD looks really good above 151 if you've never seen it. But I think EO actually looks cooler, so that's a plus for EO. But I would say the main thing that for me makes EO less fun, it's the demi-clones and also the difficulty of the last 2 sets, the 81 to 100. They made it way too easy. I don't know why. You can feel the difficulty slowly ramping up in EO all the way to 80. And then I don't know why from 81 to 100, it's just on a victory lap. It is a weird feeling, but it's kind of a shame. So if I had to rank them with all of these things, I would say PUTD is my favorite one. And then I would actually put ML High and EO on the same level. Keep in mind, I score. And scoring, I think, is more fun in EO than MLI. Because of that, it doesn't put it on the same level as MLI, even though it has other shortcomings.
Explain scoring to me. Are high scores in deep dungeons something people chase, similar to how high parses are something raiders play for?
It's not that popular because most of the time, if you are scoring, it's because you're someone that is going to do more than one clear. And like I said, most people, they just want to get the title and they want to get out. So it's not that popular. It's mostly about killing monsters as effectively as you can. And then also trying to speed run some of the sets under 30 minutes. You're not going to get a good score if you're not actively going for scoring. I think EO might see a little more scoring happen inside of it than the other 2 deep dungeons for 2 reasons, actually. First is that EO is just more popular in my opinion. So, more people playing, more scores. And the leaderboards are limited to 25 slots for each job, which means that if you are the 26th person or you get pushed off, then you're just gone from the leaderboard. That's going to motivate people to score. For example, Angelus Demonus, he doesn't score seriously, but he wants to be in the top 25 when he clears a job. So like if there's competition, then he will push scoring harder. There's a lot of people like that. And the second reason I think think starting is going to be more competitive in EO is because EO is, in my opinion, it's easier, which I think means people are going to clear more, which means there's going to be more scores on it. Maybe we're going to see a small boom in popularity for scoring in EO. Evan High did see a little bit of boom in popularity. People actually pushed a lot of scores in the last 2 years for MLI. PUTD is still not really that popular, though. I think it's the marathon side of it. Because a score run of PUTD takes about 14 hours, 15 hours. You gotta be the kind of gamer that is fine losing your run on the 14th hour because you were too greedy during your score, right? Lots of people are not into that. I'm into that, luckily. For me, it's working out, but I don't think it's working out for most people.
Clearing Deep Dungeon solo provides a unique and exclusive title. How do you rank the Necromancer, the Lone Hero, and the once and future King or Queen?
My favorite is Lone Hero. Just sounds cool, like you're the lone hero. Goes very well with the whole soloing thing. My second favorite, I would say, is the Necromancer, just because of that reputation it's got. In fact, it's the title I use most of the time because of the reputation it has. That's the title that people will send you tales and say like, hey, nice title. People don't really care about Lone Hero and they don't really care about the once and future King Queen. So I would put it in second place just for that flex. And the one I like the least is the once and future King, which I believe is a reference to something like King Arthur or something like that. Personally, I don't think it sounds that cool compared to the other two, so it's my least favorite.
Along those lines, clearing ultimate fights gives a unique weapon with an exclusive particle effect. Deep Dungeons already have unique weapon models, much like Savage does, but should clearing it solo give a special shiny weapon or additional reward more akin to ultimate?
I don't know why it works like that in Deep Dungeon. I don't know why they structured the rewards the way they did. I think it makes sense in Ultimate. You clear, you get your weapon. I don't know why in Deep Dungeon it doesn't work like that. In Deep Dungeon, if you want to get your weapon, all you have to do is grind either pull, which you can do on the lower floors, and then you get your weapon. Never really made sense to me. The comparison I often draw is it's as if you could go into Ultimate and only do the first phase, and then doing the first phase gave you one totem, and then if you did the first phase 10 times, then you could buy your weapon. I think that'd be really weird if Ultimate is structured that way, but that's the way Deep Dungeon's structured. So like, do I think it should have more rewards for clearing? Oh my god, yes, I think, because if you clear Deep Dungeons right now, all three, PUTD, you clear it once and you basically have seen everything. MLI and EO, you can clear them 5 times to get all the rewards, and then that's it. Like, you never have a reason to clear again. The actual things you need a lot of resource for, like the weapons, you can just grind them on the earlier floors. In my opinion, you should have to clear to get the weapon. And if people say, but I want a weapon, but I don't want to clear, well, I would just tell them, okay, but I want the ultimate weapon, but I don't want to clear. And so why is it fine for ultimate when it's not fine for Deep Dungeon, you know? I do wish you got more for clearing it. At the very least, I wish that was the way you unlock the weapons.
Deep Dungeons also seem primed for obscure accomplishments to aim for over time. I know there's the absurd 20k Accursed Horde pieces goal that you can spend the next 10 years of your life going after, but what achievements do you wish would have been included that weren't?
Out of all the things we thought, the things I dislike about EO, this is the only thing that actually fills me with rage. I can accept everything else, but this I cannot accept. They did not add a single new achievement for clearing solo more than once. I wish they added more achievements. In fact, what I really wish they did is I wish they added an achievement for clearing on each job specifically. So if you clear on Paladin, you would get, I don't know, Orthos Paladin. And then if you clear on Red Mage, you would get Orthos Red Mage. And then you would just have a different achievement for every job. And then if you cleared on all of them, you would get a title, right? Like an Omni title. I wish they did that. I don't know why they didn't do that, but they actually went off their way to put a 20k Accursed Horde achievement. Like, this is one of the few things that actually makes me kind of angry. I feel like you could just put an intern on the case for like a weekend, tell him make 19 achievements. Because you know, the game already tracks if you clear on a job through your score. So it's not like they could not do it. And you know, we could have like 20 new achievements for Deep Dungeons and all 3 even. I swear, if they had achievements for all the jobs, so many more people would go back in. And then so many of these people would maybe pick up scoring, and you know, that would just inject a lot of life for like so little cost. It was actually my number one wish for EO that unfortunately did not happen.
We've talked about a couple of these ideas already, but if you were hired by Square Enix to create a Deep Dungeon from scratch for 7.0, other than higher mob damage, crit autos, and job-specific titles, what concepts would you continue from the previous 3 examples, and what new aspects, if any, would you add?
I would definitely dig a little more into that roguelike aspect, which I feel like is kind of missing from EO. POTD and Evan, I always compare them to roguelike games, like Binding of Isaac or, like Sharon the Wanderer and all these kind of games. In EO, they kind of removed the RNG, and I wish that came back. I wish they added roguelike mechanics such as secret rooms, like maybe a shop that sells you a pomander. You have a selection of pomanders to choose from. I wish they made the pomanders also stack to higher numbers, so maybe you could have 5 of them, which then would mean they could make more floors hard on the later floors. Something I would like to see, I wish they did Unreal POTD and Evan High. I wish they let us bring the max level toolkits in the older deep dungeons. Man, it sucks to go back to POTD and Evan High after, and then you're like level 60. Like you're playing Reaper in EO, you're going into the Reaper phase, using all your things, it feels great. Then you go back in POTD, it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It just sucks, man. I wish they just made an Unreal POTD Evan High or something. It'd be great. Something I would maybe like to see too in another deep dungeon is a hard mode, especially because I feel like it wouldn't even be that bad to implement. Even if all the hard mode did is multiply auto attack by 2 and then HP by 2, I wish the new deep dungeon, if there's one, add a hard mode or something. Some kind of multiplier you could add to your runs to make them harder. Then maybe the multiplier could even give you more score or something like that. There are a lot of ideas to work on, but I would just really work into that roguelike aspect.
Old content with current level skills is a common request for old ultimates too. You can do it with old Savage fights by getting very specific gear pieces to simulate old stat values while still being at level 90, but you can't do it for ultimate, so I understand where you're coming from. I've only done the obligatory 1 through 50 in Palace, and I've never set foot into Heaven on High, but I went into Eureka Orthos with friends, and it shocked me how fun it was. I really like how it's designed in a way that can be approached incredibly seriously, like you did, but also just as something to do casually with friends like I did. What other type of content in Final Fantasy XIV do you think could benefit from this scaled difficulty approach?
I don't know if you've ever tried to queue solo in current expansion content. It doesn't let you. For example, if you're going to try and do whatever dungeon is in the expert roulette right now, let's say the latest dungeon that just released, if you actually try to go into it alone for like whatever reason, it will not let you. You must be a full group. It's true for all current expansion content. Because I remember in Shadowbringer, there was one of the expert dungeons I wanted to try and solo on Red Mage just for fun. And just to be able to attempt it, there was no way for me to go in outside of me asking 3 friends to queue with me and asking them to leave at the beginning of the dungeon. That was the only way for me to even attempt it. That is kind of a shame. I don't really know why it's like that. Because it's kind of the same for a dungeon, right? Like a dungeon doesn't scale more, like the more people you have, it's just a set difficulty. I wish they dug into that scale difficulty for more content. At least I wish they didn't block us from even attempting it.
Hope you enjoyed that. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below and click this link right here for the full interview.